Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, a big one. Carlota Perez's Technological Revolutions and Financial Capital.
That subtitle is key too. The dynamics of bubbles and golden ages.
Exactly. We've got the source material here, excerpts, the cover, table of contents index, the works. And our mission really is to cut through it all and really get Perez's core argument.
About how these huge technological shifts happen, right? And especially how finance gets tangled up in it all.
Right. So Carlota Perez, she spent her career looking at this intersection of tech, economics, and society.
Yeah, and her perspective is really about the long term. This book argues these revolutions, they're not just random sparks.
They follow a pattern.
That kind of rhythm, yeah, driven by that interplay between the innovation itself and the financial investment that chases it.
It feels like a really powerful way to look at, past booms and busts, maybe even what's happening now.
Absolutely. And for you listening, whether you're watching market trends or just curious about innovation history,
Or just how the world changes, really.
Perez gives you a framework, a way to see maybe a bigger picture.
Okay, so let's get into it then. What does Perez actually mean by a technological revolution? It's got to be more than just, I don't know, a new phone model.
Oh, far more, yeah. For Perez, it's a whole cluster of radical innovations. You've got new products, sure, but also new processes, new infrastructures.
Things that can change everything.
Exactly. Stuff with the potential to transform the entire economy, society even. She mentions the big ones in the intro, like mechanization,
Steam power, railways.
electricity, mass production, and yeah, the one we're sort of still in, information technology.
So it's like a whole new interconnected system.
Yeah.
And she talks about this thing called the techno-economic paradigm that comes out of these revolutions. What's that about?
The techno-economic paradigm. That's like the new DNA for the economy after a revolution hits.
The DNA.
Yeah, it's the new set of best practices, the sort of common sense way of organizing production, doing business, that just takes over.
So not just the tech itself, but how we use it and organize around it.
Precisely. New management styles, different skills needed, a whole new logic of what's efficient. It's like the invisible rule book gets rewritten.
Okay, the underlying rules change. Got it. And these changes, they don't just roll out smoothly across the board, right?
No, not at all. Perez is very clear the diffusion is really uneven.
How so?
Well, you get these initial bursts, intense innovation, experimentation, new industries popping up.
Exciting times.
And often chaotic times, too. Then that's usually followed by a phase where things spread out more. Existing industries adapt, maybe grudgingly.
And you need new rules, new institutions to catch up.
Exactly. The regulations, the support structures, they often lag behind. If you look at the book's contents page, it's structured that way. Part 1 is the theory.
And part 2 is the history, showing these waves.
Right, showing how it played out in the past.
Okay, that gives us a good map. Now, let's bring in the money, the financial capital part. Perez talks about financial explosions. What's that link between tech breakthroughs and, well, financial frenzy?
It's a crucial link. And often, yeah, a volatile one, when these really radical technologies emerge, ones with huge transformative potential.
They attract investors like moths to a flame.
Pretty much. That initial excitement, the hunt for massive returns, it fuels these periods of intense speculation, the financial explosions.
So we're thinking dot-com bubble, railway mania back in the 19th century, those kinds of things.
Exactly, those kinds of things. Perez calls this early phase the installation period.
Installation.
It's when the new tech, the new paradigm is just getting started, just being installed. But it's almost always marked by these big financial bubbles.
Because everyone's betting on the future, trying to pick the winners.
Right. Lots of money chasing relatively few proven applications yet. So you get inflated values, speculation. Think of it maybe like venture capital on a massive economy-wide scale, fueling the initial build-out.
And we know what happens to bubbles. They tend to pop.
They do. It's often painful.
But Perez says this bursting isn't just the end of the story. It can actually be a turning point, leading to something more stable.
Yes, that's a key part of her argument. The crash, the burst bubble, while disruptive, it forces a kind of reckoning.
Clears out the deadwood.
Sort of. Clears out the unsustainable ventures, the worst of the speculative excess. And that creates the opportunity, potentially, for a shift.
A shift towards what she calls the deployment period. Or even a golden age.
Exactly, the deployment period. The focus shifts ideally from just financial gains to actually using the new technology widely across the economy, spreading the benefits.
And making it part of everyday life and business.
Right. And it also involves getting the social side, the institutions, the regulations aligned to really harness the potential.
So it's moving from betting on the future to actually, like, building it.
Yeah.
And she distinguishes between financial capital and production capital here, doesn't she?
She does. It's a really important distinction for understanding that shift.
What's the core difference?
Well, financial capital, especially in that early installation phase, is often about short-term gains, novelty, speculation. It provides the initial spark, the fuel for experimentation.
The wildcatters, maybe?
You could say that. But for a sustainable golden age, that financial capital needs to eventually work with, or maybe even be guided by, production capital.
And production capital is?
That's capital focused on the long haul. Building factories, infrastructure, investing in the actual making of goods and services, creating long-term value in the real economy.
So finance kickstarts it. But production has to take over for it to really stick and deliver broad benefits.
That's the idea. You need that synergy. After the initial frenzy, production logic needs to sort of take the lead for the benefits to be widespread and lasting.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The excitement needs to translate into real, tangible progress. Now, the book dives into history. The table of contents lists these past revolutions. Why is looking back so important for her argument?
Oh, the historical cases are absolutely fundamental. By digging into the age of steam and railways, steel, autos, and now IT.
She sees the same patterns repeating.
That's exactly it. She identifies these recurring dynamics, the installation phases, the bubbles, the turning points, the potential deployment periods. They aren't just theory. She argues they've played out again and again.
So the history provides the evidence. It shows the cycle isn't just an idea, it's observable.
Right. It's about learning from those past transitions, seeing the similarities, but also the differences in how each age unfolded.
Which helps us understand maybe where we are now. The book's front matter stresses its relevance today, right? It's not just a history lesson.
Definitely not. The clear implication is that this whole framework is designed to help us make sense of the current ICT revolution, information and communication technology.
And how it's interacting with finance right now.
Precisely. Are we still, deep in an installation period, maybe an unusually long one with waves of financial excitement?
Or are we maybe nearing that potential turning point, moving towards deployment?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Perez's work suggests that understanding these deeper historical patterns is crucial for navigating whatever phase we're actually in.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down. What are the absolute key takeaways from Perez? The core message.
I think the main message is that these technological revolutions are incredibly powerful forces, obviously, but the way their benefits unfold is complex and definitely not automatic.
It's shaped heavily by finance.
Shaped very heavily by the interaction with financial capital. This creates turbulence, bubbles, crashes, but also the potential for these really prosperous, transformative golden ages.
And a big part of it is just recognizing the different phases.
Yes. Knowing the difference between that initial speculative installation period and the more mature deployment period is vital.
For who?
Businesses.
Governments.
For everyone, really. For investors trying not to get burned in a bubble, for companies planning long-term strategy, for policymakers trying to steer things toward broader benefit. It helps interpret what's going on.
And getting to that golden age, it requires more than just the tech maturing, right? It needs deliberate effort.
Absolutely. Perez argues it requires a conscious alignment. You need the technology, the finance, the right institutions, and, crucially, social adaptation and demand all pulling in roughly the same direction.
It doesn't just happen by itself.
No. It needs steering, policy, maybe even a shift in social values to really maximize the gains for society as a whole.
So what Perez gives us, ultimately, is this long-term view, a way to see beyond the daily market noise or the latest gadget hype.
Exactly. It's a framework for understanding these huge, decades-long cycles of change driven by technology and capital, seeing the bigger pattern, the forest, not just the tree.
It encourages you to think about the deep structures under the surface of the economy.
Definitely. That profound relationship between technological leaps and the financial system that both enables and sometimes disrupts them.
So, thinking about all this, here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. Based on Perez's model, where do you think we are right now with the current tech revolution?
Yeah, what signs do you see? Are they signs of that installation frenzy, or are we seeing hints of a shift towards broader deployment, that golden age potential?
And maybe what role do you think finance and government policy should play in shaping whatever comes next? It's definitely a lot to think about.
It is. And look, if this deep dive has got you thinking, we really do recommend exploring Carlota Perez's book itself.
Technological revolutions and financial capital.
Yeah, digging into those historical case studies really brings her arguments to life. It's a seriously insightful read for anyone wanting to understand the long game of economic change.